Hello and welcome back to MCU and Comics. My name is Peter Levi, and today we are going to go through the latest news digest that I posted the other day, going through various rumors and whatnot related to the MCU. We're just going to go through this bit by bit. I will skip the Falcon and Winter Soldier review that is inside the post, because I already did that separately. Although I will touch on the show just briefly. One of the things I wanted to mention, and I don't think I did in the review, is the previews we've seen, the trailers, prior to the show dropping, had made it appear like Aaron Kellyman's character, who is a gender-bent flag smasher, the character, not the group. The group's an MCU thing, is the main antagonist. And I feel like that's a fake out. That she's an antagonist, but probably an anti-hero. And whether we'll actually have a true main antagonist, or if it'll just be a series of anti-heroes like Zemo, remains to be seen. But I wanted to throw that out there because I haven't seen anyone specifically talk about that. And I feel like that's what's happened, or that's what's happening, because the way they've played out her footage, she's played out, at least in the trailers, visually, to look somewhat sympathetic. Not something you typically do for that kind of character. But yeah, beyond that, I'd recommend the Falcon and Winter Soldier review. I'll include a link for it in the description. We'll also have the usual timestamps for this, just so you can skip around to the bits of news that interest you. And I did want to mention, I actually don't think I said this in that review. But while the general impression of Falcon and the Winter Soldier has been quite positive, I did see a thread from certain, I hate using the term fanboys. I can't think of what else to use. We're talking about YouTubers, writers, whatever, who, they watch everything comic book related, are heavily opinionated, read a lot of comics, etc. I saw a thread from them that thought the first episode was a little too slow, a little too character developing, not enough action. And I found that perplexing. But it did make me realize, that there is a large audience that is truly engaged by Michael Bay style, explosions every 30 seconds, and who cares about the story. At any rate, I wanted to bring that up because I found that a little bizarre personally, but... So in terms of news, Secret Invasion first. Deadline. Andriva, I think is the writer's last name, reported that Kingsley Benadir has joined the cast, and she speculates it's for the main villain role. Now, we had a casting list put out from Daniel, which is ultimately from Production Weekly, that said the main villain, the target ages they were looking for was 50 to 60. And Benadir is 35. But if this is an alien character, if he's going to be underneath a bunch of makeup, I don't think his age matters. But it's worth keeping that in mind in terms of the guest. So he may be a villain, but he might not be the main villain, assuming Daniel's casting post is current enough. Next up, Hawkeye. So Charles Murphy believes actor Carlos Navarro is in the show, and he thinks he's either a member of the Tracksuit Mafia or he's playing a detective. And he came about this interview. He came about this information through some social media snooping and IMDb snooping. And I think what he suggests is plausible, although he avoids giving a definitive statement, and I think that's a good tactic for Murphy, as he's had some prediction issues come up, both with WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So yeah, better to be careful, I think, if you're not absolutely sure. Overall, though, is Navarro in the show? In a lot of ways, I don't care. So he's either playing a villain we'll probably never see again, or a detective will probably see it and never see again, or they're going to be like a tertiary character. So, I mean, if you like that actor, I guess it's exciting, but you're likely never to see them again, or if you are, it's going to be, in a very minor role. So, take that for what it's worth. Next up, we have Moon Knight, And here Daniel dropped a casting grid, so again, from Production Weekly. Now, he says he doesn't know what this is for, but I think when you look at it, it's pretty obvious it's for Moon Knight. So they're looking for two characters, dubbed Eddie Silver and Willow Silver, so obviously pseudonyms. One is male, Latinx, Jewish, a protective father who's concerned about his son's well-being, but also harboring a dark side. And then the wife, also Latinx, Jewish, a woman who's fiercely loving but broken by grief. So the reason why it's pretty obvious this is Moon Knight is because Moon Knight, the character Mark Spector, is Jewish. They cast Oscar Isaac, who's Guatemalan, so he's Latino. So his parents are presumably going to be Latino, or at least one of them is. And we have nothing else shooting other than She-Hulk that's coming up immediately. So it looks like these are Mark Spector's parents. And given the ages of the actors that they're looking for, 40 to 50, these have to be flashbacks because Oscar Isaac himself is 42. So not particularly exciting, I don't think. The only thing this really does is confirm that Mark Spector will be Jewish like he is in the comics, even though Oscar Isaac is not. And they're going to respect that, and that the parents are only going to appear in the past. Presumably they're dead. I actually can't remember if Mark Spector has the Batman thing where his parents are dead. I don't remember, but at any rate. Next up, Deathlok. So the showrunner for Falcon and the Winter Soldier said that he would love to take a shot at Deathlok, who is a character. He's pretty obscure. He was used in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We had a rumor about him from Deadline. I think it's 3 years old now, pretty close to that. But that specific rumor was incorrect. It was speculation from, I think it was a Deadline writer. I want to say Boucher is his last name, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, he's a minor Marvel character. He's been around for quite a while, I think since the 70s. But even if Spellman's show is a hit, which, the first episode was a good sign that it will be, I don't know that Deathlok can carry a show by himself. No one really knows who he is. Now, I'm going to throw in a caveat in a second, but you're not going to draw in casuals with Deathlok, and you're going to have a hard time drawing in non-casuals as well. It's not that he's a bad character, it's just not someone people get excited about. Now, the caveat to that is news that's not in the current post, because it came out afterwards, that it's been reported we're going to get an Echo show. So Echo is a character who is appearing in Hawkeye, that's fairly new. I'd never heard of her until the casting for Hawkeye began. And the rumor is she's getting her own show. And so she has the exact same problem that Deathlok does. No one knows who the hell she is, so how is she supposed to shoulder a Disney Plus show? So to me, that Echo report, it's probably true, but I don't consider it confirmed yet. But what it does open the door to is, maybe Marvel is willing to toss the dice on a very expensive show on Disney Plus if they like the pitch enough. Now, Echo would have the benefit of being introduced in something else, specifically the Hawkeye show. Whereas Deathlok, if Marvel doesn't have any plans for him yet, would be coming in raw or would have to be introduced somewhere else. But it's food for thought. I consider it highly unlikely. But like I said, if we actually get an Echo show, it's harder to be as rational about these things as you would like to be. Although granted, Echo does hit a lot of representation marks, and she has some similarities to Daredevil, so you could see an angle perhaps being pursued by Marvel there. But that's by the by. Next up, Edward Lauder from Small Screen is reporting that Emily Blunt has turned down the role of Susan Storm because she doesn't want to make the long-term commitment to the character. Now, this isn't the first time we've heard a report like this, although not specifically from Lauder. But I honestly just don't think he has a source for this. And by that I mean, he did hear it from someone, but I don't think he has a good source for this. I personally think this is the equivalent of me telling you the same thing. You know, I just, is it possible Blunt will not be Susan Storm? I think it's quite likely. If that's something she wanted, I think she could probably get it. But yeah, I just don't buy that the specific report is valid. Next up, Mikey Sutton. So he repeated an idea he put out back in December of 2019 that there was talk of a Journey into Mystery show at Marvel. So Journey into Mystery used to be the title of Thor's comic. In Sutton's ideas, this would be an ensemble show that would feature various characters from the Thor IP. You know, he previously mentioned Sif, and the Warriors 3, even though they're all dead, they all died in Ragnarok. Although I suppose with the multiverse, you can wiggle your way out of that. Here specifically, he's bringing it up because he says Hercules is being talked about as part of that show. Pardon me. Now, he's talked about Hercules having a show before, and it's my bad that I forgot to do the research on it. But if my memory is correct, this is a shift in what he's previously predicted. He had an R&D list for Hercules. That I remember for sure. I cannot remember if he specifically said a show was coming. I'll have to double check that. Next up, also from Sutton, this is the Thunderbolts. So he said that they could have a Disney Plus show that might have ties to Daredevil, and that the show will be spun off Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So that's how he opens his article. What's really weird is further in the article, he definitively says that yes, the Thunderbolts are coming, and yes, they're spinning off Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I don't know if that's an editing flaw on either end of that or not. I really don't know. So it's difficult for me to say that he's saying, yes, definitively these things are coming in that way, or he's hedging about it and he's unsure. Although, frankly, if something's spinning off Falcon and the Winter Soldier and he has a source, he should know that. Absolutely. He does add he thinks the character Paladin might be part of the Thunderbolts. And Paladin is an old favorite with Sutton. He's come up in other speculation. Mikey predicted he would appear in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But all of this aside, this basic idea of the Thunderbolts is not unique to him. He's not the first person to have it. This is one of the oldest scoops for Phase 4. The genuine insider, Roger Wardell, you can hear me talk about him in my Scooper video. Back in, I believe it's December of 2018, he said the Thunderbolts were coming. And there were a bunch of rumors following that for quite a few months, very tied into Norman Osborn. But this basic idea is the kind of thing that you could be the most casual, well, not casual, you could be a hardcore MCU fan if you have some familiarity with the comics but not pay any attention to Scoopers, and you could sort of deduce that this is where they're going to go. The Thunderbolts, by the way, are like Marvel's Suicide Squad. They're a group of former villains or anti-heroes who are funded by the government and go out to fight crime. Next up, this is about our good friend Ralph Bohner, Evan Peters' character from WandaVision. So apparently on his Discord, I should say, Charles Murphy said that there was a scene cut from WandaVision that confirmed Bohner was Jimmy Woo's missing person. Why this was cut is unclear, just as what the point of doing it in the first place was. I suppose it gave you a reason for Ralph to be there, but the way it's done in the show, it just seems like he's always been there, so maybe that's why it was cut. The thing is, you know, again, where is this going? The fandom is in high gear of trying to make Evan Peters relevant somehow because the solution for him in WandaVision was so unsatisfying. I did have a thought when I saw this, though, which is that if Evan Peters' character is indeed an actor, then one character he could be is Wonder Man. Wonder Man is an Avengers character, and Simon Williams, and his past is that of an actor. The thing is, I guess you could say that Ralph Bohner could be his witness protection identity, and that's what Monica Rambeau uncovers, and that's why he's acting like a dude bro. and that the interest in him from Agatha Harkness is due to that in some levels, because he does have powers. But I honestly don't know. We're so in the dark with that character, and Marvel can fortunately let that story get buried as people get more into Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then we have Black Widow coming out. So you can let that disappointment settle a little bit and deal with it later. Next up, Giant Freaking Robot says that Christopher Nolan has had talks with Marvel about directing an MCU film. I suspect that Marvel talks to a lot of people, and now that Nolan's no longer a WB, that he might be one of them. But I cannot see Nolan doing an MCU film. He rejected the WB wanting his Batman films to be part of a DCEU. So why would he want to be under the constraints at Marvel? Plus, Nolan would have to have a comprehensible plot. And I've seen a lot of Nolan films, and plot is not his forte. So, but I mean, it's one of those things. Could this be true? Sure, but it's incredibly easy to speculate. So, take that for what it's worth. We had some Daniel rumors, just 3. Jim Carrey in talks to appear in Deadpool 3. Blade will be a smaller scale film, or smaller scale than a typical MCU film, and that Marvel still has plans for the Ravagers. If you don't know who the Ravagers are, that's the Sylvester Stallone group we briefly see in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. They have one scene altogether with a group of mostly older actors. So of those 3 rumors, the middle one, the one about Blade, is plausible. Maybe it'll be a less expensive film. I mean, it's about a vampire hunter. It doesn't necessarily require a huge amount of effects. That said, I think the Ravager rumor is ridiculous. They crop up periodically, but what are you going to do with Sylvester Stallone? He's, I don't know, what is he, 74 now? I forget. I think Michelle Yeoh is one of their members too, and she's already a different character in Shang-Chi. To me, that's just silly. There's no demand for it either. There's like 3 fanboys online who are excited about that, and no one else cares. So I don't buy that. Jim Carrey talks to appear in Deadpool 3. I mean, sure, you could speculate on that, but if you're not going to attach a role or a reason, who cares? And where is that going to get you to? What's he going to do in Deadpool 3? I have no idea. So that's by the by. Now we're on to the joy that is 4chan. First up, Ant-Man Quantumania. I'll go through this one because I consider it's a plausible idea, although I don't particularly buy it. So briefly, this is what he puts out. So Kang, the Conqueror, has been cast. We know he's in Ant-Man 3. His actions disrupt the quantum realm, and that gets the various Ant-Man characters involved. Scott Lang is struggling to reconnect with Cassie after missing 5 years of her life, and Cassie getting recast. I still think that's super weird that Marvel did that. Maybe the new actress is better than Emma Fuhrmann, but it's still odd to do that so quickly. Cassie wants to be a superhero and has been training in secret, but Scott doesn't want her risking her life. Cassie ends up stealing a prototype suit and proves her worth against Kang. It's interesting there that Scott's the one who doesn't want her to do it, as opposed to Hope. I feel like Marvel has leaned into Scott being the sort of doofus for everyone else in his own franchise a little too hard. But again, it's a 4chan thing, so we don't know if that's what's really going to happen. Kang kidnaps Hank Pym at one point. In the third act, Kang recruits doubles of himself from different points of time to deal with them. Louise, Maggie, and Paxton will return. Maybe Bill Foster, but Kurt and Dave won't be back. Excuse me, I already know Dave won't be back. That's T.I. And neither will be Ghost. It says Austin Abrams is in negotiations to play Cassie's boyfriend, Mike. Who cares? And Bill Hader to play Hope's business rival, George Tarleton. I have no idea who that is. I love Bill Hader, but this isn't really the franchise I want to see him in. So there's nothing about that that's implausible per se, but I think it's very unlikely. One of the problems with the Ant-Man films is they've been very small scale, so a lot of Marvel fans, casuals in particular, have skipped them. The first movie I think is quite good. The second movie is not nearly as good. But they have been auspiciously low earners for Marvel. And there's no question that Marvel is aware of this, and there's no point in putting this stuff on film unless you're going to make a mark. So what this description lacks is an appearance from the Young Avengers, which is a popular rumor that they will appear here. And also it lacks an appearance from the Fantastic Four, which is another popular rumor that they will appear here. And the reason why one or the other of those are at least somewhat plausible is to add some zip to a franchise that no one has grabbed onto yet. You cannot go with the same old, which is what this plot description describes, and expect more audience to show up. Your people are not going to show up for Cassie Lang. That's not enough. People are not going to show up for Kane the Conqueror. Casual people have no idea who he is. In all my years of reading a comic, I never ran into Kane the Conqueror. I knew he existed, but he wasn't an exciting villain. I just knew who he was. So yeah, so I while plausible, I don't buy that at all. Next up, there was a 4chan post that covered the MCU en masse. It's quite long, but in my article, I dismiss it. I think it's a collection of other people's rumors, wishful thinking, and speculation. A little fun to go through, but yeah. Then we got another post that was actually copy pasting a guy on Twitter, a purported scooper, yet another Twitter scooper. And this was kind of interesting to comb through their. So first of all, English is not their first language. That's quite apparent. In one of their posts, they accidentally refer to themselves as "we." I don't know if that's a slip of the tongue or if there's actually more than one person managing the account. And I don't think they have access to real information or not. But I'm going to go through at least a couple things that they said, just to explain why I don't. So in February, early February, the Twitter user said that the Namor casting tests were going on for Namor. What would that be for? The only things that are currently going into production are Moon Knight and She-Hulk, neither of which slot for Namor at all. Beyond that, you're going to start to get into things like, I'm trying to remember which movie is next. I wanted to say Black Panther 2, but I actually can't remember if that's the next one on the slate. This is the problem when you're just trying to remember. But yeah, there would be no point in dealing with Namor casting right now. So I just don't believe that. Now this person has said, very Mikey Sutton style, that they're just hearing these things and they're not necessarily confirmed. Pretty much what happens is if something comes close to confirming what they've said, they're like, aha, I was right. And if it doesn't, they're like, oh well, that's just what I heard. So yet another reason to not take this very seriously. Just trying to think what else. Yeah, so they had a descriptor of what Doctor Strange 2 was like. And the reason I dismissed this was the plot was going to function off of Mordo tricking Wanda, pretending to be her friend, pretending to help her out, and then tricking her. That is literally what Agatha Harkness does to her in her own show. Well, not literally. She's not trying to train her necessarily, but the whole tricking element is the same idea. I don't see Marvel repeating beats like that. I just don't. Then he has a descriptor of what mutants is going to be. And this is also to me implausible because he suggests that the film, the first X-Men film, will be focused on Moira McTaggart and Charles Xavier. And that is way too noodly and inside baseball for casual fans. No one would show up for that, even with the X-Men name. So I don't believe that either. And finally, he has a thing about Fantastic Four. This is not as ridiculous, I guess, but to me it's just as implausible. It has a whole bunch of things going on you can see in the article itself. I actually don't think it's worth going through. But yeah, I think this Twitter user, they might have someone giving them information. You never want to say they don't have a source, But I just think this is very Joshua Munn-esque, where you are putting up speculation based on what you've heard and based on other rumors and just hoping to hit the target. Nothing about this sounds like inside information to me, so I don't think that Twitter user is credible or worth paying attention to. And that wraps up the info in the news digest. As mentioned, I'll put in timestamps just so you can skip around. While there was a fair amount to cover, in the grand scheme of things, not a lot of hard news. Obviously, the next news summary is in progress, as it always is. Beyond that, we'll have a Falcon and Winter Soldier review coming up after the episode airs. I've been thinking about doing a reaction to the Snyder Cut. I've already seen it, but just like reviewing it. But I actually think I would have to watch it again to do that properly. It's a very long film. And I'm almost tempted to rewatch the theatrical cut, the Joss Whedon cut, just for some comparison. But I'm not 100% sure about that. That's not MCU related, so that would just be me, going through that just for my own impressions. At any rate, though, I've certainly rambled on long enough. Thank you for watching. It's always appreciated. Any comments down below, please go ahead. I do look at them. And we will catch you all next time.